Being touted as a future all-time great from pretty much day one, Lionel Messi has basically been taking our collective breaths away ever since the very first day we laid eyes on him. And due to the undeniable God-gifted ability, there hasn't been too many times in his now 20+ year career where he was really doubted by the masses. Simply put, the man was far too obviously talented from far too early. However, this very undeniable ability coupled with his reserved and humble image off the pitch has at times led his detractors to not only actively look for whatever shortcomings he may have, but also pile on the misery when he does indeed come short. Unfortunately for them though, as hard as they may try, at the end of the day, you simply can't keep a great footballer down. And here are a few notable examples of little Leo rising above the hate, as these are 7 times Lionel Messi silenced his critics. Though first, I do feel almost obliged to remind you that this list is exactly that. Times where Messi has silenced his critics. This is not a list ranking his greatest ever moments, though naturally a few may cross over. I'll let you decide which ones for yourself. And also, here's a little spoiler / big warning. If you are under the age of 20, the choice for number 1 will most probably not just shock you, but may actually confuse you a little. So just remember, listen to the breakdown carefully before making up your mind. Hope that's all clear. Let's roll on. Number 7, his final season at Barcelona. Being the 7th entry on this list, this is obviously the weakest entry on this list, but even then I won't lie, this is the weakest by quite some margin. So after being told for years that he can only perform well when with world-class players who are consistently on form, in his last season at Barcelona following the exit of Luis Suarez, Messi proved that even when surrounded by relative mediocrity, he can still perform at a world-class level. And here is why this is pretty weak. Number 1, he still had the likes of Busquets, Alba and Piqué, the former 2 who were still integral parts of the team. And 2, his 2 bodies along the front line contributed with 31 goals between them. So, I don't know. But still man, weak it may be compared to the other entries on this list, I still found this pretty hard to ignore cause not only did Leo score 1 more goal than all 3 of his forward sidekicks combined, which led him to waltz to another Pichichi by the way, but he did it in a season where Football Club Barcelona as a club were in some serious shit off the pitch. And as a captain / senior member of the squad, who also just happens to be the greatest player the club has ever had, there is no chance this wouldn't have affected his on-pitch exploits even a little bit. And yet despite all that, Messi's performance somehow improved from the previous season as he ended his legendary career at Catalonia with 1 final trophy. Number 6, the Champions League final 2009. So when doing research for this video, I came to discover that Messi and Ronaldo are constantly compared. Which of course inevitably means that you constantly get fans boasting about specific areas of the game which their guy has the upper hand on. And needless to say, the areas in which Leo is inferior in usually revolves around physicality and athleticism, with the significantly smaller and less bothered Argentinian clearly lacking the speed, endurance, and most notably heading ability possessed by his perceived career rival. So it just made it all that and more shocking when Leo not only jumped both in between and above possibly the best centre-back pairing in the world at the time, but he did so and scored in a Champions League final and in front of CR7 himself no less. You can't write this stuff, can you? Number 5. The Bernabeu Clasico 16-17. So for the longest of time, Messi has been criticised by many like myself for only thriving when his teams were on the front foot. Whereas in instances where they were up against the tide and desperately searching for answers, he seemed to just go into his shell and vanish into thin air. Well, on the 23rd of April 2017, he told those people, including yours truly, the precise location to the nearest square meter where he wished us to go. Doing so by putting up a match-winning display in the biggest game of his season, when not only were his team running out of ideas, but he himself was running out of teeth. Cause despite having already caught an elbow to the face early on that made him look like one of those gentle lovers who are extremely giving all month round, the guy went on to... Fuck me, that was a filthy joke. I regret already saying that. Ugh. Period. So yeah, despite Messi already having caught an elbow from Marcelo and eventually going behind in the game, it was he who not only pulled his side back with a brilliant solo effort just after the half-hour mark, but also won it for them in emphatic fashion deep into injury time. And this time, there were no quote-unquote special circumstances to aid him, no teammates to piggyback off, and no sending-offs to rely on. Just a pure clutch. Wait, no. Ramos was sent off. Also, the grass that day was green. Number 4. Perfecting a once weak weapon. So ever since the birth of this rivalry, one of the ways in which people have distinguished the characteristics of these guys is by constantly pushing the narrative of Ronaldo being a relentless and borderline obsessed perfectionist who works hard at pretty much every aspect of his game. On the other hand, Messi is a god-gifted genius whose career has basically been him making the most of his gifts, staying in teams and environments that help him maximize those gifts, thus never really having to change his game. And look, I'm not like other YouTubers who claim that this claim itself is complete BS to try and be different. There is certainly a lot of truth to this, but as usual, the whole truth is somewhere in the middle. And one of the ways in which Leo has proved this notion to occasionally be a bit of bollocks was in late 2015 when, while he was still at Barca, still playing in the same system, still alongside those world-class teammates, not only did he add another dimension to his game, but he mastered the skill to such a point where it actually became one of his most reliable weapons in the latter half of his career. I am of course talking about free kicks! Because believe it or not, by the time Messi scored his first free kick for Barcelona, he was already a 2-time La Liga champion and had already bagged the Champions League, kind of. But starting from the 15-16 season, Leo began banging those f***ers in and, no joke, banging them in more regularly than he was banging in penalties. Seriously, he missed 50% of his penalties for Barca that season and actually scored twice as many free kicks. Wow. And since then, as of recording, Messi went on to score a further 43 free kicks in the subsequent 9 years, showing that not only was he capable of adding a new weapon to his arsenal, but more importantly, akin to the reputation held by his biggest rival, was willing to put in hours and hours of practice to master the usage of said weapon to a devastating standard. Number 3, reaching his peak post-muscle problems. So despite his obvious early talents, one of the reasons why Messi had a pretty stop-start beginning to his career at Barcelona was due to a string of muscle injuries that plagued him during that time. But then after having recovered, won multiple titles, and one insane year where he basically reinvented the term prolific, near the end of the 12-13 season, the muscle injuries unfortunately returned. And following a relatively underwhelming 13-14 campaign, which again looked like this, some people were actually saying that Leo already may have reached his peak. I mean, I don't remember seeing any reports of him being finished or anything, but there were concerns that as acceleration and explosiveness was a huge part of his game, the hefty and hapless harms to his haggard hamstrings hampering and ergo heavily hindering his hype and health could hypothetically hijack his greatest years from us, and we may therefore never see him at his magical best ever again. But nope. Cause bruh, never mind him just getting back to his best, bro somehow got even better, turning in his greatest season ever in 14-15, followed by another 6 or so years of world domination, including another peak in 18-19. Number 2, Brazil 21/Qatar 22. So coming from what is arguably the biggest footballing nation in the world, there was always going to be a lot of pressure on the shoulders of Lionel Messi. And for what was well over a decade, Leo did seem to crack under that pressure in the pivotal moments for his country. And this eventually became so much that, following a penalty miss in a Copa America final shootout in 2016, Messi announced his retirement from the Argentina national team. An announcement which was both preceded and followed by fans all over the world, including some of his very own, deeming him an international failure. But then came 2021, and with it Messi's 4th Copa America tournament in 6 years. But you see, this time it was different. This time it was personal. Hosted by his biggest rivals on the international stage, Messi began the tournament on fire, and up until the final, just got hotter and hotter on almost a game-to-game basis, putting up one of the greatest individual tournament performances the Copa America has ever seen, and leading the Albiceleste to their first title in 28 years. But he wasn't done there though. Nope. Because the very next year came the World Cup. And just a mere 6 years after almost universally being labelled a failure, Messi finally got his hands on the biggest trophy in the sport. What a story. Now, some of you may be thinking that despite this being pretty much a perfect tale of redemption, why is this only second? Well, firstly, just wait and see what number 1 is. But secondly, I'm sorry, but the shouts of him being an international failure were always bullshit. The guy was his nation's all-time top scorer and assist provider before all that stuff. And B, as I've said many times now, his 2022 World Cup victory was very circumstantial? Is that the word? Basically, it wasn't as much down to his brilliance as people think. Watch this video. So yeah, as incredible of a story as that was, the circumstances will leave an eternal asterisk. Though the same certainly cannot be said for number 1 becoming the man. So much like many things in Messi's career, including the entry we just discussed with the World Cup and all, this too ultimately links back to Maradona. And listen, if you're a patriotic Argentinian watching this, you're almost certain to point to the World Cup as the moment Messi surpassed, or at least got on the level of Maradona. But for someone like me who has never been a Barcelona fan, and I'm certainly not an Albiceleste fan anymore either, looking at it from the outside, there was absolutely no way, with all due respect, very fluky tournament filled with questionable refereeing and fortunate circumstances will ever even remotely compare to what El Diego did in 1986. Zero chance. On the contrary, the number 1 entry on this list, my friends, is the day where La Pulga became not the next Maradona, but the very first Lionel Messi. And before I tell you the precise moment in which I believe this happened, let me first explain why I mentioned in the intro that the younger fans may not appreciate this as much. You see, for so long, living up to the new Maradona tag seemed so impossible that legit brilliant players with stellar careers of their own were basically seen as failures, as they weren't able to fill the enormous void left by the little squat man. Serious ballers like Juan Riquelme, Ariel Ortega, and even Leo's boyhood hero Pablo Aimar. Like, these were genuinely world-class players, yet all in the eyes of some will forever be remembered as being in the shadow of El Diego. To the point where, by the way, these men at one stage really thought, yeah, f it, this is never gonna happen, and actually retired the number 10 shirt. But then in stepped this guy, and despite drawing comparisons to the man from day one due to his diminutive stature, amazing dribbling, low center of gravity, and a general tendency to be hands-on with everything football, it wasn't until 2010-2011 where Leo truly stamped his own mark on football's Mount Rushmore. Because you see, by 2011, the Champions League had very much overtaken the World Cup as the number 1 competition in the world. Gone were the days when players from different regions of the world stayed put within their continents and only really came face to face every 4 years. Ergo, in simple words, the best of the best were now applying their trade in the UCL. Yet none of them in that season could stop this man, as Leo went on to destroy Real multiple times, put in consistent big game displays, showcase to the world that he could do everything Maradona did and in some ways even more, and eventually take his beloved Barcelona to victory at Wembley Stadium. And this was the moment, because after dominating Europe for years and already stacking up a trophy collection which was as good if not better than his mentors, Messi's performances on the 28th of May 2011 for me was the final step in cementing him as not the successor to Maradona, but superior to Maradona. And when you assess it as a whole, being able to not only live up to, but surpass the accomplishments of one of the greatest players ever, who you've not only been mercilessly compared to since the beginning, but multiple world-class players have shrunken under the pressure of being compared to before you, and to achieve all that at the unbelievably young age of 23, no doubt there has never been a better example of Lionel Messi silencing his doubters. Simply put, on that fateful night in London, the little man truly stood tall. And that is that. What do you think of this list? Are there any instances of Messi silencing his critics that I missed out? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Till next time, people, keep rolling.